Look up, a lot of people are. In now 4 states, sightings of drones in the sky the size of cars dominating headlines. In New Jersey, and now sightings also reported in New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. The question of what they are now echoed in 4 states and in the minds of multiple lawmakers, even at the White House. Listen to National Security spokesman John Kirby addressing concerns.
While there is no known malicious activity occurring, the reported sightings there do, however, highlight a gap in authorities. And so we urge Congress to pass important legislation that will extend and expand existing counter-drone authorities so that we are better prepared to identify and mitigate any potential threats to airports or other critical infrastructure, and so that state and local authorities are provided all the tools that they need to respond to such threats as well.
Yeah, they look small, but they are very big. Moments ago, New York Governor Kathy Hochul weighed in on the New York drone sightings, saying on social media this time there is no evidence that these drones pose a public safety or national security threat, close quote. So I want to talk live to Jonathan Rupprecht. Jonathan, welcome into CBS News 24/7. You're fascinating to talk to because you're a drone attorney, you're an FAA certified commercial pilot, and you're a flight instructor. So I'm fascinated to see your read on all of this reporting, especially what we just heard from Hochul.
Yes, I think what strikes me is, kind of how when people are trying to get to the bottom of what is going on here, that seems to be the big issue, is they're trying to figure out what is going on, right? Are these bad guy drones? Are these good guy drones? We don't know. And we're kind of at the preliminary issue here of being able to figure out how to discriminate good guy drone, bad guy drone. And there seems to be a breakdown going on there from federal, state, and local law enforcement as to what is going on here. So when people are kind of asking the broader question, whose responsibility is it to track these things down? You have DHS is dealing with terrorism. You have DOJ and FBI dealing with criminal laws. We have the FAA dealing with protecting the airspace. They're dealing with safety. When you get higher up, they're trying to keep aircraft away from the drones and stuff like that. But we're dealing with, at the lower portions here, the interaction of really these drones with the public and people on the ground. The FAA has created Part 89, the remote identification regulations, to allow state, local law enforcement, as well as the public, to be able to receive certain types of signals. And if those signals are being broadcasted, then you can be able to tell where this drone is and actually how high it is, because it's actually very hard to determine how high these drones are. Even during the day, there's actually studies out there that explain that it is very difficult. And then now you're doing it at night. It's like, that's extremely hard.
Right.
And so you have remote identification also can potentially allow you to identify where the ground controller location is and then maybe go over and stop them people. So is law enforcement even receiving these signals? And that needs to be clearly disclosed to everybody. Like, we don't have anything. Well, that's an interesting point, because if you don't actually receive anything and you are actually receiving everything else, you validated the equipment, then potentially you might have a careless clues, maybe a criminal type of actor here. But we haven't even got to that point. We're at the very preliminary stage of, like, are these guys breaking the law? Because it's not illegal to fly a drone in the United States, especially at night. Recreational as well as non-recreational flyers can fly drones lawfully all the time without requesting permission from the federal government. And some of these people are actually having anti-collision lights on their drones, which appears to kind of make it look like they're actually trying to follow the law. So specifically 14 CFR 107.29 says you have to have an anti-collision light. So what's going on there? Now, There might be some indications as to maybe these might be bad guy drones if they're flying in an area that maybe they shouldn't be. For example, prisons. Do they really need to be flying over the prisons? What about military installations? Do you really have a legitimate interest, reason to fly over a military installation? Probably not. But one thing that they might be able to fly near that kind of causes a lot of confusion is airports. For example, the FAA has implemented this Lance system, is what it's called, and it allows for rapid authorizations. And in the news, there's been a lot of talks about drones flying near airports, and that's dangerous and scary and stuff like that. But over the last so many years, the FAA has granted over 1 million authorizations for drones to fly lawfully near airports. So that's 1 million reasons why there could be a lawful drone flight happening.
So tell me this, with somebody with your expertise, when you just look at this and you've seen a lot of the footage, what do you think these things are? Our investigation shows 8 feet wingspan. Just to your eye, what are they and what's their capability? Best case scenario, it's just somebody flying around. Worst case scenario?
there's nothing illegal about having an 8-foot drone flying around, right? And so it could just be a guy with an 8-foot drone flying around at night. He's testing it out. Worst case scenario, it could be an individual that is trying to do reconnaissance, right? You could have either some type of private industrial espionage. You could also have nation state actor espionage, something maybe along those lines. So if you don't see anything underneath it, that might indicate that it might be terrorism, or maybe it's a precursor to terrorism. But that's in a worst case scenario. At the same time, we have many lawful people flying lawfully all the time, helping people and save lives.
So, you have different layers to this. You have federal, you have local, you have state law enforcement. Do you think that this case now, and we're seeing it now in 4 states, is going to help us hone the coordination between those different layers of government, perhaps in responding to something like this in the future?
I believe so. I mean, this is a good wake-up call for everyone to figure out, like, hey, are we actually receiving these remote identification signals? And as the local law enforcement on the ground, are these officers trained on how to do that? Potentially, and so that way you can kind of escalate it up from there, saying, hey guys, there's a drone that is not broadcasting. Potentially that makes it suspicious at that point because it's not following the law. Therefore, we need to kind of escalate and further investigate. And so it's really kind of honing everybody here. Additionally, even if you have identified that is a potential suspicious drone that you need to get into, that creates a lot of issues. Because how do you go further about tracking and kind of finding out where this the controller is? Where's the bad guy, if you will? If there isn't a bad guy, it might be a clueless guy that just needs educating, going like, hey, by the way, give me your license registration. I need to see figuring out what's going on here. There needs to be some effort on state, local, and federal, as well as coordinating efforts as to allow the local law enforcement, the boots on the ground, to be able to do more advanced types of detection. Now, there's an interesting point here because people are kind of bringing up this issue. How do you deal with the bad guy drones? The first part is, right, we got the detect, and you kind of have to discriminate, if you will, good guy drone, bad guy drone, suspicious drone, right? And then if you want to go about resolving the problem, you need to defeat it. And the problem there is when you get into the detection and you get into the defeating, there are a lot of laws that have been created which hamper federal, state, and local law enforcement in how they potentially go about doing that. For example, you have the Fourth Amendment protections, which were intentionally designed from it's designed to hamper the federal government from doing complete mass surveillance of people inside their homes, right? As you have the Caro case and as well as the Carpenter case, when you have people out and about and you're tracking their cell phones and stuff like that, you have that case law playing this whole situation there. You also have Fourth Amendment, reasonable expectation of privacy in people's homes. You have Wiretap Act. So if you're trying to intercept these signals that maybe are encrypted or there's a modulation that is not readily available. So even in the detection, there are problems from a constitutional and a statutory federal law standpoint that are hampering federal and state and local law enforcement from even kind of further investigating, double clicking, if you will, into these issues. And then even if you get past that, how do you go about interdicting and stopping these drones? If let's say they are bad, there is an issue there because currently granted from federal statutes are that only certain federal agencies have the ability to do these types of interdiction, destruction type of countering, the defeats, if you will.
To knock them out of the sky.
Yeah, exactly. The shoot them out of the sky analogy, right? So you got DOD and you have DOJ, you have certain ones there, but that is not given to the state and local. And so sometimes people are bringing this up and they're saying, well, we have drones. How do we actually resolve it? And that's creating a tension there because state and local is wanting to come in and they're wanting to create something. And at the same time, there is an issue there of how do we make this all work while at the same time promoting commerce and allowing these drones to fly? Because you can see where this can go from here is that a creative state might want to say, we want to create a law that you have to put our specific state remote identification law, a device on it. And it's going to cost $1,000 a year or something, because we're going to bring everybody to, know what's going on, safety, all that. Well, that's going to cause a lot of problems because people are not going to actually be able to fly there. There might be congestion of the airspace and elsewhere because people will be flying drones elsewhere and not here. And so that creates a really big hindrance to the federal government basically integrating drones across the United States. So when people kind of create a law, what happens is when there's a cause, there's an effect, right? The effect is sometimes drones go fly somewhere else, and that causes an over-concentration, potentially creating more risk here. And so we have in the Constitution, we have this basically that What it is that the federal law is the supreme law of the land. And the idea is you just don't want the federal government having to kind of constantly deal with all of these state and local laws and trying to implement everything, and that it's going to supersede. And if there is a field preemption kind of argument or there's a conflict preemption, then the federal law is going to take control. And in aviation, there's Supreme Court case law that has held that it is a field preempted area, that it's so heavily regulated that it's kind of implied that, hey, there's nothing really here for you state and local guys to really do. Additionally, there's another argument that the creation, basically the compliance with this particular type of law is so impossible that it is substantially frustrated or prevents the person from doing it. It's a conflict. And we have an example of that over in, it was the city of Newton over in Massachusetts. There was a case over there where the city said, you cannot fly below 400 feet. Well, at the same time, the federal government is saying, you have to fly your drone, right, under 400 feet. So that's the big issue. So.
Well, a lot of people getting their voices heard, getting scholarly about it. Meanwhile, the people on the ground in 4 states saying, what the hell is it? Jonathan, thank you so much. Fascinating conversation.